Welcome everyone, join us today as we pay tribute to Brian Wilson, the mastermind behind the Beach Boys' iconic sound, who transformed surf rock into a deeply emotional and innovative art form. So let's dive in. Brian Douglas Wilson, born June 20, 1942 in Inglewood, California, United States of America. Brian was born the first of three sons to Murray and Audrey Wilson. Murray, a frustrated songwriter, supported the family by working on the production line at the nearby Goodyear tire factory. Married young at 21 and 20, Brian's parents shared a love of music, and both played piano. The family moved to Hawthorne, in southwest Los Angeles County, in 1944 following the birth of their second son Dennis. Music entered Brian's life early. At age 2, he heard George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, a piece that moved him deeply and left a lasting impression. Growing up, Brian and his younger brothers Dennis and Carl were immersed in music, often singing together at home. But their upbringing was also marked by emotional and physical abuse from their demanding father, who projected his unrealized ambitions onto his sons while constantly undermining their accomplishments. Brian learned to play the piano and accordion, sang in his school choir, and developed an early ear for harmony by teaching Dennis and Carl how to sing parts. He listened religiously to doo-wop, R&B, and the Everly Brothers on the radio. At Hawthorne High School, Brian was a multi-talented athlete, playing football as quarterback, running cross-country, and playing baseball. In 1960, he enrolled at El Camino College in Los Angeles as a psychology major. A year later, he composed his first original melody, loosely inspired by When You Wish Upon a Star. That same year, Brian, Dennis, and Carl formed a band with their cousin Mike Love and neighborhood friend Al Jardine. Brian played bass, Carl handled lead guitar, Dennis was on drums, Al played rhythm guitar, and all five sang. They initially called themselves the Pendletones, after a popular plaid shirt brand they used to wear. After being turned down by one label, they visited family friends Height and Dorinda Morgan, who ran a small recording outfit in Hollywood. The Morgans liked their covers but encouraged them to write original material. Inspired by Dennis's passion for surfing, Brian and Mike quickly returned with a catchy tune titled Surfin'. A record promoter rebranded the group as the Beach Boys just in time for the single's release. The song became a local hit, attracting Capitol Records, who viewed them as the fresh-faced teenage gold they were seeking. Capitol signed the group to a 7-year deal. Their next singles, Surfin' Safari and Surfin' USA, launched them onto the national charts. Brian's range as a songwriter soon emerged with Surfer Girl, a tender ballad inspired by a girlfriend and showcasing rich vocal harmonies. Its B-side, Little Juice Coup, marked his first collaboration with DJ and lyricist Roger Christian. That partnership soon produced one of their finest songs, Don't Worry Baby in 1964, a lush production that reflected Brian's admiration for Phil Spector's grand, layered sound. Although Brian had a deep love for cars and girls, his fear of the ocean kept him off a surfboard. In November 1964, at age 22, he married 16-year-old Marilyn Rovell. She, along with her sister Diane and cousin Ginger Blake, performed as a vocal trio called the Harmonies, a group on whom Brian would hone his budding production talents. He and Marilyn had begun dating 2 years earlier, and he proposed by phone while on tour, shortly after suffering a mid-air panic attack en route to Australia, an early sign of the emotional struggles that would later intensify. Not long after, Brian asserted his independence from the stifling control of his father, who had been managing the Beach Boys. Murray had tried to dominate every aspect of their career, acting as manager, publicist, and uninvited songwriting advisor. Though his financial support had provided the Wilson brothers with their first instruments, cars, and surfboards, Murray belittled Brian's work, dismissing his songs as trivial. He even imposed bizarre fines, $50 for socializing with girls, $100 for swearing, and another $100 for not setting up equipment quickly enough. The breaking point came during a tense 1964 recording session for I Get Around, which would become their first #1 hit. Following a heated argument, Murray was dismissed by the band. However, he retained control of their publishing company. In 1969, much to Brian's outrage, Murray sold the group's song rights for $700,000, a sum that would soon pale in comparison to their true value, which would rise into the millions. At the height of the Beach Boys' success, Brian began showing signs of emotional strain. He had always struggled with nerves during live performances, and after another mid-air panic attack, the band made the difficult decision to excuse him from touring. Session guitarist Glenn Campbell, not yet a solo star, initially stepped in for live shows before Bruce Johnston became the group's permanent touring replacement. Freed from the stress of life on the road, Brian found his sanctuary in the recording studio. It was there he truly thrived, collaborating with top-tier Los Angeles session musicians who admired his adventurous musical instincts. His unconventional ideas inspired these players to push creative boundaries, introducing fresh textures and sounds to Beach Boys records. Bass harmonicas, accordions, and even bottles and cans became part of his sonic palette. As Brian later reflected, his ambition was to redraw the entire map of pop music. That shift in direction was already taking shape on hits like Help Me Rhonda and California Girls, but it reached its full expression with Pet Sounds. Apart from Sloop John B., a traditional folk tune suggested by Al Jardine and reimagined as a single, the album marked a departure from their signature sound. Instead of upbeat songs about surfing and cars, Brian offered wistful ballads full of intricate harmonies and emotional depth. Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder, I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, I Know There's an Answer, and Caroline No. Not everyone in the band welcomed this new musical vision. Tensions grew, especially after Brian's first LSD experience in spring 1965, which left a lasting impact on him. Mike Love, in particular, disliked the introspective lyrics crafted by Tony Asher, a copywriter whose poetic sensibilities complemented Brian's melodies beautifully. As the group's energetic frontman, Love preferred to stick with the proven formula and didn't hesitate to challenge the shift, leading to a rift that would never fully heal. When Pet Sounds received only a modest response in the US, despite being hailed as a masterpiece in the UK, Love felt vindicated. Brian's next project, a bold and experimental song cycle initially titled Dumb Angel and later known as Smile, caused even deeper divisions. Although Love contributed lyrics to Good Vibrations, a masterwork pieced together from over 30 separate sessions, he clashed with the surrealist verses penned by Van Dyke Parks for the rest of the album. Brian, seeking inspiration, had even installed a sandbox around his piano at home to stay connected with nature as he composed. But the band couldn't agree on the direction. As the songs became more ambitious and complex, so did the studio sessions. For a track called The Elements Fire, which was meant to musically capture the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, Brian asked the musicians to wear toy fire helmets bought by his wife Marilyn. When a fire broke out across the street afterward, followed by more local blazes, he took it as a troubling sign. But the real unraveling of Smile came from within. Mounting internal tensions led Van Dyke Parks to walk away, and eventually Brian, disillusioned and emotionally drained, stepped back from the project. After the death of his father in 1973, Brian's emotional struggles deepened. Once known for his tireless work ethic and creative drive, he began retreating from public life. At his Bel Air mansion, where he lived with his wife Marilyn and their two young daughters, Carney and Wendy, Brian slipped into a period of isolation. He often rose late, indulged in junk food, and played his beloved Phil Spector records for comfort. Friends and visitors noticed his increasing reclusiveness, and over the years, his health began to decline, his weight at one point surpassing 140 kilograms, a far cry from his earlier days when he ran a health food store called the Radiant Radish. Though remnants of the abandoned Smile sessions were eventually released as Smiley Smile, and Good Vibrations had become a global chart topper, Brian's active involvement in the Beach Boys albums gradually waned. Their mainstream popularity also faded, despite flashes of brilliance from Brian, ranging from the radiant optimism of This Whole World to the haunting vulnerability of Till I Die. Even their appearance at New York's Fillmore East with the Grateful Dead and the long-awaited release of The Stunning Surf's Up in 1971, originally premiered in a solo TV performance for Leonard Bernstein, could not fully revive the group's commercial fortunes. A magical set at Wembley Stadium in 1975 briefly reignited public adoration, but Brian was absent. In the years that followed, the band weathered a series of challenges: inconsistent reunion records, management turmoil, creative rifts, particularly between Mike Love and the Wilson brothers, and the heartbreaking loss of Dennis in 1983. Carl Wilson often acted as the peacemaker, while Al Jardine eventually stepped away. Meanwhile, Brian's personal life saw more upheaval. he and Marilyn divorced, and his mental health became the focus of an intense, controversial period under the supervision of psychotherapist Eugene Landy, who initially diagnosed Brian with paranoid schizophrenia. From the early 1980s to the early 90s, Landy oversaw nearly every aspect of Brian's life, providing round-the-clock care, but also taking on roles as his manager, co-writer, and producer. This level of control, which reportedly came with a hefty annual fee and royalties, would later be widely criticized. During this time, Brian released his acclaimed 1988 solo album, featuring the heartfelt Love and Mercy, a song that suggested he was on the path to healing. That same year, his autobiography Wouldn't It Be Nice was released, though it was written under Landy's supervision and later disowned by Brian himself. Though Eugene Landy initially helped Brian lose weight and stop using recreational drugs, possibly saving his life, many believed his heavy-handed methods and excessive medication left Brian a subdued, hollow version of himself. In 1986, a chance meeting with Cadillac saleswoman Melinda Ledbetter changed everything. As portrayed later in the 2014 film Love and Mercy, Melinda played a crucial role in freeing Brian from Landy's control. Landy was later stripped of his license for unethical conduct and improper drug prescriptions. After subsequent psychiatric evaluations between 1992 and 1994, Brian's favored diagnoses was of schizoaffective disorder and mild bipolarity. After years of emotional distance from his daughters, a breakthrough came in 1994 when Brian co-wrote Fantasy is Reality, Bells of Madness with Carney. The moving session, where Brian openly wept, marked the beginning of their reconciliation. He later contributed to their 1997 album The Wilsons, and joined his daughters on stage in 2001 at a tribute concert at Radio City Music Hall, another step toward healing. Brian married Melinda in 1995, and they adopted 5 children, 3 daughters, Daria, Delaney and Dakota, and 2 sons, Dylan and Dash. With Melinda as his new manager, Brian began a remarkable resurgence. In 1998, following the death of his brother Carl from lung cancer, Brian embarked on a world tour performing Pet Sounds in its entirety, backed by LA band The Wondermints. The critically acclaimed performances were reprised in 2016 to celebrate the album's 50th anniversary. In 2002, Brian performed God Only Knows in the gardens of Buckingham Palace for Queen Elizabeth II's Golden Jubilee. 2 years later, he premiered the long-awaited Smile at London's Royal Festival Hall, earning a standing ovation, especially for Van Dyke Park's in attendance. A new recording of the piece followed, along with the long-lost original 1967 sessions, both met with critical acclaim. In the years that followed, Brian released several solo albums, featuring a mix of new material and guest appearances from admirers like Elton John and Paul McCartney. Though his live performances occasionally showed signs of strain and his once angelic voice had faded, he continued to deliver moments of magic, reminding audiences of the brilliance and warmth that defined his legacy. In January 2024, his wife and longtime supporter Melinda passed away. Just 2 weeks later, his team filed for a conservatorship after Brian was diagnosed with dementia. Sadly, on June 11, 2025, Brian passed away, 9 days before his 83rd birthday. No cause of death was disclosed by the family. And there you have it. Though Brian Wilson is no longer with us, his music defined a generation and reshaped the very idea of what pop could be. Though his life was marked by immense struggle, his creativity and influence never wavered. As his voice fades into history, his songs continue to echo across time, a bittersweet reminder of a fragile genius who gave the world beauty beyond words. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos just like this. Take care and bye for now.